apologize being a couple minutes late to get going, but Lisa, if you could put the agenda up on the screen when you get a chance. And as she's doing that, we do have one big item on the agenda tonight. We've got the public facilities chapter that we'll be walking through, and then we're also going to spend some time on some other, to talk through the status of several of the other topics. And I did, before we get started, and as Lisa's putting this up, I have asked for just confirmation. I know I've been asked by several folks about the opportunity to make amendments, at least on the transportation chapter. And what I am, I'll say this again, although it's not fleshed out in any detail, but if any task force member has amendments that they want to propose for last minute consideration, at the task force meeting where the entire task force recommendation will be considered, so basically the compiled task force recommendations, at that point, before that meeting, I will ask for any final amendments to be proposed. I would ask that those be circulated before the meeting, so we'll know exactly how many amendments we'll have to vote on that night. Go through, have some very brief discussion of those amendments, and then vote on them, and then incorporate those, whatever the vote is, into the final task force recommendation, and then vote on the final task force recommendation. So on that last meeting, there'll be in order to consider. John Mooney.
Yes, since you mentioned my middle name, transportation.
Yes.
If people, as they gather these proposed amendments, I would like very much to have a copy of those as soon as possible, so I can begin my own process of ordering them, if that makes sense to you, Walter.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, if you do, and frankly, it may be that someone sends you something, John, a proposed amendment, and then when we get closer to the meeting, maybe they decide to withdraw it, and that's okay too.
Right.
So, but let's.
But because I'm familiar with the information, it might be easier for me to put them in a rational order, or a more reasonable order.
And John, your middle name doesn't really start with T, does it?
No.
Okay, just checking. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Lisa, for putting up the agenda for today. The second item, Chris, can you give us a quick update on the conversations with David Stoner? Please do that, and next steps.
Hi, Walter. Thanks. Chris Caperton with the Fairfax County Department of Planning and Development. The update is brief. David Stoner, who was with the group last time, has been working with Barbara and Bill Mayland and St. Clair and myself, looking for some examples of language and actually parsing out some of the more detailed responses that are needed. I know that they've also reached out to Michelle Kimmel as part of that conversation. So I would expect that this little group will have something to report at maybe one of the two meetings next week. And since there was a pregnant pause, if you look at public facilities section tonight, you'll see an example of the use of the word will that I think is appropriate, but we'll make that a puzzle and see if folks can find that later on. Or at least what I'm talking about. Thanks, Supervisor.
Thank you, Chris. So did anyone have any questions or anything additional to add?
Yes,
Chris?
please.
Yes, Tammy.
It's not for Chris necessarily. I cannot get the attendee register to open to show who's in it. we don't have many people on the task force here. They might be stuck there. I don't know whether it's a button that has to be pushed to get the attendees to be displayed.
I'm able to see them, Tammy, but
Tammy,
can
we
other
did
people
hear
see
from
them?
several task force members that weren't able to attend today. So there's probably like 4 or 5 who weren't here.
My attendees are displayed also.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure, Tammy. And I'm gonna try to, Tammy, I'm gonna try to email you right now the
Thank
list. Sure. Oh, I've totally failed in my technology. Okay, if
Or-
somebody could ship that to Tammy, just so she can flag anybody that needs to be pulled up.
Hey, Walter. Hi,
Yes.
it's Lynn. I
Hey,
just
Lynn.
sent you an email. We're actually up in Cape Pond Springs, West
Oh.
Virginia,
Nice.
and the well, the
Not so
internet
much.
is not very good.
Ah,
So
got it.
I was wondering if I could give Tammy my voting proxy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess let me ask this just out of courtesy. Charles, do you anticipate any close votes tonight on anything with that? Because I think that's the only thing we're going to be voting on tonight. Charles?
Mute. I don't think there will be. I
Okay.
think I hopefully it'll be straightforward.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you,
Yeah,
Walter.
and Len, I tell you what, if it looks like there's anything that's close, Len, one of us will text you. Would that be okay?
Can't get text.
There's no text up there.
No.
Sorry.
I don't
Didn't mean
know
to laugh.
getting this through.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's impressive. Okay, well, let's see if we can get through without doing proxies. We haven't done proxies yet, so let's see if we can get through it. But if there's anything close, then we can bring it up.
By
Tammy,
the
what do you think?
The attendee list just popped up, so something
Okay, good.
somebody opened something. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Tammy. Okay, anything else on the language discussion with David Stoner in the county attorney's office? Okay, then let's just dive right in. I would note we do have, after we go through, Charles, after you talk about public facilities, we do have, we need to talk a little bit about schedule and then upcoming topics and where the different chapter discussions are, task force and staff. And then we also, towards the end, starting to get some additional information that was included as an attachment on basically the crosswalk comprehensive plan and planned zoning district issues. So anyway, if we get to that tonight, great. I don't know if folks probably haven't had a chance to read through the attachment thoroughly. So we'll probably just have an intro to that and then bring that back to the next task force meeting as well. So with that, Charles, I'll turn it over to you to give us a report and recommendation on public facilities.
Cool. All righty, and let's see now. I'd like to share the screen. What do? I hit share. Someone need to grant me permission.
Yep, I'm working on it right now, Charles. You'll have it in just a
Great.
sec.
Cool. And while that's happening, I will mention that we might put things in the category of substantive and non-substantive. And what I mean by non-substantive is editorial comments, of which John Mooney had quite a number of them. And it's like a comment, a comma, or just a tweaking, changing the structure and the bullets to match, things like that. I call those non-substantive. So if you all have till midnight, we can go over those issues and debate them, or we can focus on the substantive. So let's see, do I have sharing now? Good. Let's see my application, and I'm going to go to Word. Here we go. Can you all see this?
We can see it, Charles.
What? You see
Yeah,
it?
we can see it. Absolutely.
Excellent. All righty. I'll give you a quick tour. Essentially, really not much has changed on this other than that. The planning staff went through and did editing and reorganizing. They did, Chris and St. Clair did an excellent job. And Chris and St. Clair also did an excellent job of reaching out to the various agencies, and they have added or expanded their sections. And things are pretty much the same. I'll quickly show you. We've got the preamble, which includes the principles. We have a table that inventories existing and future facilities. We then go into the detailed sections, which are all blown out or edited by the different agencies. Not much changed, possibly a tweak in the parks section, which I will bring up with you. And let's see now. Now, in the last iteration that they had done, the water and sewer conversation had been removed. And the reason for that is that it is, and I would agree with the fact it is redundant with the county plan, like there's not necessarily a need for it. But on the other hand, the water and sewer authorities did not object to including this language. So we went ahead and put the language back in, which gets into water and sewer capacity. I will say you have an issue of things like major like infrastructure, like I don't know the correct exact term, but like main lines for water and sewer that might need major additions or overhauls as your population growth. I did not address that here because I'm just taking it on faith after conversations with the people in charge of the sewer plant that they plan and address that. Like you don't have to mandate that they do it. They do long range planning for it. And they also have specific policies or laws on short-term capacity to ensure that whenever development goes in, or they will pay for the upgrade at the local level. And then we do have some stuff on waste and recycling. So that is it. Now, in terms of areas that we can talk about, let me go down here. I will, sorry, I'm having, there we go, I'm just moving something. Okay, here at the top, one substantive thing is John Mooney had suggested some discussion about adding equity in transportation up in this section. I don't think that we have time to write that, but I don't think it's a big deal, so I can go ahead and do that. Is it something anyone think we need to vote on that, or is it non-controversial? I can just add it with help from John.
Charles, may I expand on that? I thought it would be good to have it in the introductory sentence because we want to make sure that we have equitable access for all citizens of whatever area of Reston and whatever their economic status is, that they have equitable access, transportation access to public facilities. And then I repeated that, as you know, Charles, especially with regards to the community centers and to the what else? There are several health and human services and the library. So, but I think we need at least to put it there, and perhaps we would put it in some other key places. I'm thinking especially health and human services because they serve primarily the lower income people. So
Is that a principal? I don't remember.
It is a principle, but I think it bears, in my view, being called out here with regard to public facilities.
If it's one of the principles, I can add it in the list here with its own semicolon. And if it's not a principle, I can add a sentence after the principles. That I'm just trying to be consistent. This was an attempt to summarize the principles.
Right.
So if I'll just make a note. If a principle, add to list. If not, add a sentence. So I have no objections over that. Does anyone feel this is something anyone have any discussion or comments or objections?
Charles,
Yes.
equity is planning principle number 12.
Okay. Let me look at this now. I'm just moving the. Okay. Community, sustaining high quality and promoting health and wellness. Okay, I'll do a equity refresh on that. I was hoping we could bring this to closure without, I guess we could just do like an edit afterwards, like I can send it out again. And if there's something major, we'll just send it back to the task force, but hopefully what we discussed here, I can get it added in and we can just call it a wrap unless someone objects to the next version. So I'll go ahead and add something on equity and transportation, and I'll make sure that equity is covered as well.
John, did you have a comment on that, John?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I trust Charles to do it. And I would just add, do others share my concern about explicitly stating that we're concerned that all residents of Reston have access to these public facilities?
100% agree.
Fully agree, John.
Okay, so I don't sense it then that that's an issue.
I trust you, Charles, to write something.
Okay, well, the thing you have to worry about is my my attention to detail, but I'll send another draft so people can just review it, but we'll make sure we address it. The other thing that I think had been suggested is including something about Wi-Fi access in all facilities. I don't mind including that either, although it's very specific. Does anyone have any comments or objections to that? I can just try to work it in here somewhere, maybe with the help of Chris. Let's see, I'm going to make a, hold on. Let me just edit that and having a little trouble here. Another comment, please post your comment. Okay. Now, if I hit this, it's not letting me. Okay, I'll just make another comment, see if I can do this. Sorry, bear with me, folks. I just want this to, okay, include Wi-Fi access. Maybe I'll figure something out. Okay, and then other substances.
Charles, this is David. Just a note about, I think it was Chris Daniels who suggested the
Yes.
inclusion of Wi-Fi access. Do we know, or can Walter and staff educate us on this? I would assume that all schools have Wi-Fi access. Certainly, the library has Wi-Fi access. I would assume that the North County Government Center has Wi-Fi access, but is it accessible to somebody sitting out in the? And do they want it accessible to somebody sitting out in the lobby? I mean, the question is, public facilities all have Wi-Fi, but do they? I would think, but do they agree to share it with the public as they walk in?
Yeah, that's actually a good point because you have the issue, not every place may want it accessible, perhaps a school, for example, and then you may have some security issues. Just an example, I can't use McDonald's Wi-Fi because it's very dangerous. Like it's a classic hacking place. And so I don't want to interfere. I might, if I include it, I could try to keep it broad to give out so that like maybe the IT people for the county can identify areas where it's not prudent.
Maybe
Yeah.
we could say where feasible, we should, the county should try to make a Wi-Fi access available in public facilities where feasible, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the discussion's good, and I was gonna say, I know here in the county, North County Governmental Center, there is a public Wi-Fi network that's available. But I'm not sure, I don't think most schools have it. I think, so yeah, there may be some
Yeah.
type of public facilities that are.
You have issues like where it's not secure or password protected and some unsuspecting citizens
Tammy?
do their online banking.
The
Yeah,
public
right.
school system, the board just passed new rules about kids using their phone. So during class and when they can use it. And it's different for different ages, what they came up with. So yeah, they do have access in the schools. To their horror, they have access.
Okay. All right, I'm going to now point your attention to one little thing that got slipped in here. And I'm hoping it doesn't derail us or cause a big fuss. It's under the public recreational and entertainment facilities. Each of these sections, by the way, has been, again, looked at by the respective agencies. For example, under public recreation and entertainment, in fact, the Park Authority looked this over. And one thing they added here is one of our oldies but goodies is this appears to be the sports tourism thing. It's not called that. Plan for Hunter Mill District is a large-scale destination facility providing indoor, aquatic, and fitness recreation to include a family-friendly pool with water features and/or competitive swimming 50-meter, which I looked up is an Olympic pool. So I don't know if the county is going to try to buy for the Olympics or something with DC someday, as well as indoor recreation facilities. So this is in here now. Now I had barked back at them because I'm not that enthusiastic, but they then added this section here, which is they'll follow a master planning process to determine the specific details of this facility and will include community input. That might be where Chris said we're looking for the word will. I don't know. Okay, comments, Tammy?
You're a winner, Charles. You're the winner.
Ding,
What
ding,
do I
ding.
get?
All right. Tammy,
Yes, this pool with the fun pool is a description of what Bill Bowie told me would be in the Reston, I'm sorry, the Hunter Mill Rec Center to be located in RTC North.
Okay.
Sports tourism has 3 components. A natatorium, which would be this pool, which makes me nervous, a big track, and an indoor sports court facility. And we've seen drawings for this, we've seen layouts, but we are told that doesn't exist. My husband actually has the presentation with the slides on this that was made in 2020. So I think COVID started derailed it, I hope. This is a huge thing because sports tourism would advantage people, local teams, yes, but also people from all over the country. And what it does is it takes away the usage of a major Reston Park, Barron Cameron, for most prime weekends. And we taxpayers pay the freight to keep the park up and keep these buildings up, and others are using it. So it is a prime number 1 hell no rule that you don't have locals paying the freight, but others using it. What this also would do, which would benefit the community, but not the taxpayer, is it would be a boon to the hospitality industry in this town. But I don't think our parks are meant to benefit the hospitality industry. They are for residents to have access to the fields and to the open space that we pay our taxes for. So it's a huge debate. And if there's anything in this chapter, I was waiting for this conversation on sports tourism to come in parks and open space chapter, not the facilities chapter, frankly. But your description sounds like the Hunter Mill proposed rec center, which isn't even on the calendar. So
Okay, now, Chris can add in if he wants, but under 19, you can see here. They had also added here, and they put Reston Town Center North. So I have a question out to them. We haven't heard back from them yet. Is this match with what I just showed you down below? Now, here's where I want a clarification from the rest of you. When this says Reston Town Center North, I thought that referred to the specific tract that's just north of Town Center, but it doesn't include Barron Cameron Park, or does this term mean anything north of Reston Town Center?
no,
Does that include Barron Cameron, this
no,
term?
does not. Reston Town Center North is where Walter's office is, does not include Barron Cameron Park.
Yeah, so that's what we're trying to find out. Are there two things? Or is there one thing and they have the locations mixed up? Or do
Well,
they
that's
tend to
what you wanna
put
be
this
worried about.
facility in RTC North? And as far as I know, does anyone know, is there anything in the plans? I have not seen anything in the RTC North plans for something of this magnitude. Or is there for a smaller one?
There actually is in the plans for Reston Town Center North. There are plans to do a rec center there. So
Okay,
that's
so
on the
then
list.
this is probably then fine. This is a different thing. It doesn't match the one below. So then this is simply then a new one that's added. Oh, it's not new. It's one we have that has been around for a while. I also felt that they
Well,
could.
I thought this was one and the same. I mean, Sam Hudson is still out of town, Park Authority, or
Yeah.
she would have been here. Andy Dorlesser can chip in if she'd like, but I believe I believe they're one and the same. This facility and the one referenced in the table.
Maybe they misunderstood the terminology. So yeah, I apologize, task force. We couldn't get clarification on this at this point in the game.
It's an easy
Hey,
fix.
this is Andy Dorlester.
Yeah, hey, Andy.
I'm with the DPD now, but I was previously with the Park Authority for 16
Oh,
years,
great, thank
up
you.
until January. And Walter's correct. There is a county rec center plan for Reston Town Center North. So it would have the indoor pool and fitness facilities like you would find at other county rec centers. It's not bond funded yet, but there's a space for it. I forget how many square feet, 90,000, 80,000, something like that.
Yeah.
In the RTC
that
development.
So that could be that. Would that be big enough for Olympic-sized pools?
Yes.
I think so, yes.
The one in RTC, okay. So maybe that's what they are in fact referring to.
Well, let's not guess about it. Let's just put in RTC North. Plan for
Right.
100 Mill District, large scale facility in RTC
In RTC North, yeah.
and just
Put it in here where I'm pointing.
100. Just do it. And then we don't have to guess because we don't want any plan that we're guessing at stuff. It has to be very clear.
RTC North. And then if the parks, it's not what they meant, then we'll have to come back. That's the issue because it's a greater. But they added the second part when I was expressing concerns, similar to what you're expressing, Tammy, they said that we would have input to it. The only other change, I just assume that we can't stop them because they own the land and they're allowed to go ahead and follow this process, and that's for.
Don't want to stop them giving us a rec center. We've been waiting for it for 50 years.
Okay,
God's sake, don't stop them.
so this is it. Okay, that's what we'll do.
Don't stop them.
Charles,
Yes.
we're nibbling at this point, but it's included in the comments I gave you, and that is the how on page 2 in the table, item 20 in the table, how that tracks with the text concerning public recreational and entertainment facilities. It would seem that that section, public recreational and entertainment facilities on page 5, is meant to explain in greater detail what appears in item 20 in the table. However, there are items there that don't track at all. And I think we need to make those two sections, if I'm reading it right, then we need to make those two sections track with each other.
Well, if we put RTC, Reston Town Center North down here, they would then track because that would match up with something in 19, and then what's in that row up above. See, this would match if we add RTC in the language below, then this would be okay. But the alternative is that's not what they meant. There's two things. And we would have to add existing and planning to expand. And we would then have to put that in here and it would match up with that paragraph.
Can
Yeah,
I make
Tammy, please.
correction, please?
Yeah.
Number 20 includes Stratton Woods. Stratton Woods is not in the Reston planning zone. The subdivision isn't and the park isn't. So that needs to be removed.
Yeah. My general point is, and you're giving another, for instance, Tammy, item 20 in the table does not track with the text on page 5. We need to make sure they track.
Okay,
And
thanks.
what you're saying, John, is it has to mention expansion as well as existing. Something that says it's not.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
in this instance, I'm only talking about, so on the item 20 in the table says Fairfax County Parks Authority recreational facilities, including at Barron Cameron, Stratton Woods, South Lakes, Reston North, and Stewart
Right.
Road. And nowhere, and not, those are not all explained in the text. How other parts of the table, other items in the table are explained in the text. That's what I'm
To be
concerned.
explained. I mean, do they need to be described in detail? Are you
Yeah,
saying you need to
John,
have
is that
like
because they're existing, or are you thinking there need to be explanation?
I guess, so the table talks about established things and planned things. And so I think it would be therefore whatever is existing or whatever is planned, either both of those categories. Does that make sense? I mean, that's how the
Tammy.
table is constructed.
100. There's also an error in this number 20. There's a part that isn't included that is Park Authority, and that is the one right behind, right north of Home Depot. That isn't included.
That's Reston North.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Is that what
that's
that is?
called Reston North. Yep.
Thank you. Thank
It's the
you.
name of a park and it's not in this list?
No. That's the
it's
name of the
there.
park. It's correct.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's
I
that's
did.
all right.
I've never heard of it.
Oh, that's
referenced.
Reston North. Okay.
Yeah.
So then the
everyone says
only
Home
error
Depot.
here is that this is not
Correct.
Reston area. We'll notify them of that. This was written not by me, but by the Parks Authority, and I just assumed it was accurate. Not in Reston, okay. So I'm making a note of that, okay? And so we have to do something. I mean, my preference would be to keep this as it is. not to like try to do what John wants to do and like talk about what's future and not future. My preference would be to then just clarify that this number 19 corresponds to what they're talking about down here. Okay, that would be, but that may not be what they intend. So we
No,
could
Yeah,
add.
I think, Charles, I think it is. I'm almost sure that
Okay,
that's the
all
same.
right.
And
So
yeah,
then
Chris
feel much
thinks so
better
too.
too, because it's a
Yeah.
planned location. We're not whacking an existing park. Okay.
Yeah, because I've certainly heard about the competitive swimming at the future rec center. And so,
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm skeptical it helps the hospitality sector because they
Oh, this
always,
is not. This is the Reston. This is the
yeah.
Hunter Mill RA. This has nothing to do with hospitality. The sports
Yeah.
tourism at Barron Cameron
Does.
absolutely
Yeah.
does.
Okay, so anyway, then that technically we're sort of like just matching this. Okay, that is it then. And I don't know, does anyone feel this requires a vote to make this change? I think it's pretty straightforward, but what we can do is when we get an answer from the Parks Authority that this is indeed the sports tourism facility, then we can come back and debate it. Albeit,
It's,
I don't know if there's anything we can do. So my last desperate thing, if that's what it was I was going to simply add to this, instead of also plan for, I was going to add the park authority is planning and leave it at that. So it doesn't make it sound like we endorsed it. But I don't know that you can stop it anyway. That's it. Anyone have any other comments or suggestions here?
I guess, Charles, I would say this, that in trying to make sure that we have a accurate correspondence between item 20 on the table and the text on page 5, I think it would be helpful once that is sorted out with the Fairfax County folks, that we see that text so that we're not surprised by something that is added or subtracted from either place. Because this is really, these are important points. And I think, just
Yeah, I agree.
sharing that text with the task force so that people can calm any concerns.
Well, yeah, John, you gave me 2 pages of edits here also, so I want to get all of those in red line. And everyone will be able to see the final version, but I'm hoping we can just vote on this or approve it tonight. And then the only way this would come back substantively for a vote would be if the park authority really doubles down and says, no, it's not RTC North. It's different, then we have to come back. But I'd like to say RTC North now to nail it down that way and put the onus on them to change it. So I would propose that we accept this subject to the edits we discussed here and the non-substantive edits, helpful editing that John Mooney provided. And then we'll all see the final red line version and have a chance to comment on it. And I only anticipate voting on this again if this turns out to be the sports tourism thing. And that's my thoughts here.
Tammy,
Objections?
I hate to throw a wrench in this, but I'm concerned about right above water and sewer. A location for a proposed Reston Performing Arts Center is identified pending identification of funding source for countywide or private entities. I think that needs to be more complete, and I am shaken today to find out that the Economic Development Authority is proposing to loan the money under their bond for the construction of this place. And if they default, RCC, my information today is that RCC is on the hook for that. And
RCC is?
well, that is, and again, this, I've just gotten this email today. The person who researched this is pretty credible. So I would love to wipe this off the, out of this plan.
So,
Till we find out about the indebtedness, and also if Fairfax County Economic Development Authority does this, there is no referendum. There is no voice of the people in small tax district number 5 saying, wait a minute, we don't particularly want we absolutely don't want the liability for something that where the loan cannot be repaid with the proceeds from the performances at this place. So this is an astronomically expensive proposal. And if we don't have the county behind it, we have the Economic Development Authority, which is not the county. And the throwback is that RCC will be left holding the bag. That's a whole nother parameter that we have
Tammy,
not been
Tammy,
discussing.
Tammy, I think your concern, it sounds like, is that RCC pay for this, and I'm reading this, that funding source from countywide or private entities.
Right, and
Doesn't
with
that address it?
well, you would hope it would, but it's not. Then there should be a sentence in there that under no circumstance will RCC be responsible. I mean, that
Well,
would be fine, but
Tammy, I mean, obviously the task force make whatever recommendation, but just FYI, and this is outside of the comprehensive plan. I plan on putting together a town hall in the next couple weeks on the proposed art center, because there's been virtually no opportunity for discussion by the community of the financing issue. And so it looks like I am going to need to make a motion at the Board of Supervisors later next month in order to meet the 48-month requirement in the proffer. But yeah, I'm not saying the task force should do one thing or another, but this is definitely going to be a hot issue in the next few weeks.
given what you've just said, Walter, I think
Yep.
wipe this off, and then there can be a follow-on amendment that you're discussing at the end so that we can get Charles' approval. And this
Okay.
doesn't have to be in here.
I mean, the other option, yeah, my only thought was that does the funding aspect have to be addressed in this, or is that a different issue?
Yeah, it has to be
Yes,
addressed
plan.
if the RCC,
Well, it has to be addressed, but in other words, is it a master plan, comprehensive plan issue?
well,
Or is
it
it a
should be.
separate thing?
We should be responsible. We are representing our community, and it's a huge liability. So not to be thorough in how this is planned, to me, would be very poor planning language. So I would
I know the issues here. This actually happened in Baltimore, where they have a big development where the city loaned $600 million, and
exactly,
it's turning out to be a disaster.
exactly.
Yeah.
So Tammy, your suggestion, take it all out and then come back with it later at the last meeting with based on what is known at that point.
Correct. There has to
Okay.
be more knowledge, because I'm
That
not
makes
sure
sense.
that the skinny I got today is accurate. It sounds accurate. The person is credible, but I just, yeah, please. I would remove this paragraph sentence.
This was added in by I think this, Chris, do you recall, was this in the original, or did the Parks people add it in? You there?
Charles, I want to say that it was in the original, but
Yeah.
I'm double checking right now.
It's in the existing comp plan.
While Chris is
Yeah.
checking, Tammy, let me ask you, would an alternative approach, Tammy, be to leave that language in, but to put in brackets, this is to be verified at the end of the task force process? so that we see what
Well,
staff.
I,
see-
I, I hear what you're saying. To me, this whole language is very vague. Is identified, doesn't say where. Pending identification of a funding source. Well, we don't have that either. So
No.
why would you put in something that is so nebulous unless you're going to quantify, locate, discuss it, and give give RCC an out where this is not on RCC's back. Then the development authority can decide, hey, this is in the plan, RCC's not taking this on. So,
I
it
have
just,
to agree with Tammy on this. This is, unless there's a lot more detail in that paragraph, I think it should be stricken.
Anyone else have comments?
I guess the danger of striking it that I see is that we could possibly overlook an adequate version of it later. So by getting rid, what I was saying is leave it in, but say this has to be verified at the end of the process by the task force. That reminds us.
I will guarantee you, John Mooney Penniman is on this task force. He is a governor. He is not going to let it go away.
Yeah, I don't think that strike they'll say, well, we can't build it now because they took it out of the public facilities section.
No.
What,
Kill the actual project.
John Carter, I don't want to get into the middle of all this, but I'll make a try at, why not leave it the way it is and add to it instead of RCC? So it's countywide or private entities instead of RCC. And I also would add, isn't the park fund supposed to be paying for this in part, at least? So I would put countywide park fund and what does that say?
This shows it's funded by Fairfax County and private sector.
Why wouldn't it be funded by the park fund? It's a park item. But the key point is instead of RCC, isn't that what you're after, Tammy?
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm after.
So why wouldn't you put that in there? And we do know where it goes. We have a site for it.
Right. And that could be stated.
Okay, so let's get this right. How would this be worded then?
So I would suggest is identified for adjacent to the town center metro station. A location for a proposed Reston Performing Arts Center is identified at the adjacent to the town center metro station.
At the
No, adjacent to.
adjacent to.
Yeah.
Town center metro station.
Yes, and then pending identification of a funding source from countywide or private entities instead of RCC.
Or how about excluding RCC?
It's okay.
Okay. And let's fix this other one. So what should we put in here then?
Well, I guess you'd put excluding RCC in there after private sector.
Fairfax County private sector excluding
Yeah,
RCC. Now,
you could put adjacent to the town center metro station in the third column instead of near.
and then there's potential inconsistency. Here it says Fairfax County, which implies the county is funding it.
Well, you could say countywide, I guess, if to make them in parallel.
Well, countywide is kind of vague. That yeah, I don't know what that means. Is it, who funds it when they said countywide, or do I need to ask them?
Or you could just change it to countywide in both of them, isn't that?
Well, except that countywide is not a funding source, it's an adjective. Like it's not like countywide mortgages that they are bond fund, countywide just mean, it could be a bunch of private artists all over the county.
So what I was suggesting
Yeah.
is just leave Fairfax County here and then
Yeah.
change the other paragraph to Fairfax County.
Right, that would be more logical, and then we can see if there's an issue. Hold on, let's see.
And I think what Tammy's after is excluding RCC.
Check that one. And excluding RCC, is that right? Is that Reston Community Center or?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then down here, I'm going to say from Fairfax County, and then we'll see what the parks people say or whoever added.
Right.
Fairfax County, because I know I never added countywide unless I picked it up from the
Or
27.
private entities. And that would allow the park authority to help fund this.
Good, okay. All right.
I had another, it's a minor suggestion. Do you need a map that locates all these facilities? And then I was going to suggest at the beginning of each paragraph, use the actual name that's in the table,
I could do that.
maybe in bold.
So I'm just going to make a note, the name or maybe the row. Although then someone is going to then go back and say, well, actually, you shouldn't do that because it's.
Yeah, I would actually use the number and the name. But I mean, this is a minor point. It's just for clarity.
Reference. The planning staff have any comments on that? Like what makes a good written plan? I don't really care.
Well, just do what you think is best.
Yeah, let's talk about that, Charles.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just add, we'll discuss.
It's just a suggestion from me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good suggestion. The only resistance is that it's one of those things that might be different from other parts of the plan, and someone might then say, take it out again, so. Yeah, this has been a lot of in and out on this structure here, but it's a good idea.
There are many maps in other chapters, Charles.
What's that?
There are many maps in other chapters.
Yeah, I don't think we need a map, but the referencing is not a bad idea.
Mm-hmm. Just use your own judgment.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, something tells me the map's not necessary here. It makes more sense for things like the land use and the specific sections. Any other comments or suggestions or objections?
I don't really have a comment, just a verification that if we all vote on this and it passes, does that mean that some issues such as John Mooney's inclusion of equity at the beginning, is that going to be in, or is it going to be the way it is? I mean, you mentioned that you just wanted it to be as is, but now we're talking about changes.
Yeah, no, Jan, actually, I'm proposing making the changes that I footnoted here in the discussion. So I would address something here. I would address Wi-Fi where feasible, so on. So I'd probably put the references in. I would clarify the location that it's RTC. I see all the things we've talked about would go in there. And the only thing that you're not seeing now would be micro edits that people might suggest. And John Mooney had a lot of edits, which I have no objections to that I was going to make. And he sent those around a little before the meeting. So, and I did in fact look them over, and none of them were anything anyone would object to. But I think we'll have another chance to look at this. I'll send around a red line.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
And Charles, I've got a couple questions on fire and rescue section and the HHS section. You list 5 stations, 2 of which are clearly in Reston, and yet in line 3 of the paragraph below it, you talk about a future second Reston station. We've already got 2.
Let's see, South. This is provided by the fire and rescue staff.
Well, I understand that, but
Yeah.
the number's still wrong.
So the
The
number,
reference to a second
Right.
station is wrong.
David, I think they're talking about splitting Station 25, but we might be able to clarify that.
You mean at
There would be an
Wheeling?
additional station, an additional fire station, not at Wheelie, but somewhere in 25's area. Station 31 doesn't have the call volume, but Station 25 does.
Okay.
So it might be a third station to your point, but I think what they're probably trying to say is that there's an additional need based on call volume for a second station to supplement Station 25.
Okay, well, perhaps then Charles could clarify that in the below paragraph, just to make sure that everybody understands what that second actually means. It's a second to Station 25, not to Reston.
I think that's worth clarifying. Yeah.
And the other issue was in Health and Human Services. I understand, they were the ones who wrote this text, but
they kept the text also.
say again.
I mean, yeah, but they also built off of mine.
Okay,
Yeah.
so my
yeah.
question or my concern is, it seems to indicate that we're going to combine facilities to have one place for people to go to get HHS services, and I'm wondering whether that's a wise decision. I can understand one at in the north part of over by where the current one is or nearby, and maybe you could say that there is one down in South Reston, but I'm wondering whether we should encourage them to make one facility or whether we should encourage them to have satellite offices as well. At least one in the south of Reston and one in the north of
Kind
Reston.
of going through language like that, and I started to think that it gets into an area where maybe I would almost prefer that they make the call, that they would understand better. Like they talk about things like co-location and so on, which made a lot of sense to me. So we could.
I'm not suggesting that we should tell them how to do their job. All I'm saying is that if they want to have just one facility for all of Reston, then they should probably add some kind of explanatory comment about it, because that for people who need those services, who are not otherwise able to go to a physician or an urgent care place, maybe they figure they can do exactly what they need to do with what they're proposing here, and I just would like some clarification from them that is the case.
May I make a comment, please? This is
Tammy,
Tammy.
yes, please.
When the presentation was made by the Health and Human Services staff, first of all, we have to remember, this is not a Reston facility. This is the Northwest Fairfax County Health and Human Services facility that they were talking about. And I believe that they stated, and I could be wrong, but 186,000 square feet is needed. And they had determined that they needed to do this to have economies of scale, that the satellite offices were very expensive, and that they were trying to combine them save money. But this is not a Reston facility. This is the Northwest County. So it's more than Reston by a long shot. It's the whole Northwest County Health and Human Services. I don't know if that helps or hurts, but that's what the place is called.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that, Tammy. I was thinking the same thing because the existing facility is much more than Reston. It's really for the whole northwestern part of the county.
Right.
Okay.
So David, where exact, hold on. All right. So David, where exactly were you referring to when you had the concern? You said they needed clarification. Are you talking about the second paragraph?
Yeah, second paragraph, the third sentence, as part of Reston Town Center North redevelopment, new human services center is planned that will consolidate the programs and services provided at the existing Lake Ann and Cameron Glen into one centralized human services center for the North County.
Can
So
I?
if that's what they want, then that's what they want.
That's I read that and I remember making a mental note of it, and I remember thinking that that's what they plan to do. That it probably is something they thought is more efficient, or they have a reason for doing it. So I actually did not think of it as an issue.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that is the new Human Services Center for Reston Town Center North that we've talked about. It's just, it goes in a little more detail here in terms of explaining what it is. It's a new office building that's already there, that's being expanded to include Lake Ann.
Okay, and then in the third paragraph, of course, it says residents of Reston zip codes 191 and 190 have a moderate to high number of encounters with HHS centralized services and programs. So that maybe argues that even though it's North County, it does a lot of its business in Reston.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that statement. I guess we looked at it in the past. But I guess I don't remember that from going through this in the past.
I think maybe you need to circle back just to make sure that they're going to be able to do what they need to do for North County residents, including those in those two zip codes, from that one facility. That's all I'm concerned about.
Yeah, it is planned to be a new facility, a new office building, and it's planned for that, but it's probably a little ways off.
Let's see. So they're saying so we can ask them to clarify and and give them a chance to add any additional clarification on the locations. So again, it says it'll consolidate the programs and services
Right.
into one centralized for North County, but it doesn't specifically say where it is.
It's in Reston Town Center North.
Okay, as part of Reston Towns. Okay.
And it's referred to in the land use chapter, just not with the consolidation point, but that's what it is.
So if I may just make a quick point, David is hitting on the same point from the perspective of centralization of services that I was trying to hit at from the perspective of equitable transportation to facilities, and that is accessibility, easy, reliable accessibility, especially for our lower income residents to these important county services, because I have personally seen in other places I've served where human services are at a great distance from the centralized service area. And so you have to make up for it either by occasional scattered clinics or something like that, or you have to make up with it with more convenient and reliable transportation for these good people. It's a question of accessibility to service.
The existing
Very good, John.
facility here in Reston Town Center North doesn't just cover Reston.
I understand that. I understand that. What I'm saying is we should have as a principle of our comprehensive plan, accessibility for those for whom accessibility is a special challenge, that they have accessibility to these centralized government services, whether it's by scattered sites or by better transportation. I think we need to stress equitable accessibility.
Do we
Because I've
clarification
worked in
here, or
cities where
can-
that has failed.
Yeah, I would point out Reston's not that big. Like a lot of times these discussions refer to things like, you have to come to Reston, but you live in, near Alexandria or something, or like places. I used to live in a town where the nearest city was 20 miles away and there was nothing in the town.
May I make a suggestion? There may be imbued already in HHS vouchers for transportation for folks. So I agree 100%, John. The transportation, easy, free transportation needs to be put into effect. I'm not sure there's not already a voucher system for a taxi or whatever to get
Yeah.
people to this. And I think that needs to be examined as that's part of the HHS service to provide accessibility. So I completely respect what you're saying. I think it may be built in already. I pray it's built in already. There's talk about having the bus system, which would not necessarily be accessible and easy, be free. And I don't know if that'll ever happen, but these are all, ideas in the wind. But this may already be a solved problem. Is anybody aware of anybody who has these services? And if they have that, I am not. But I think we could find that out fairly easily.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion. Frankly, this human services facility provides a lot of services beyond just, I would say, the normal, what you would consider traditional human services. It also includes the health department and services provided that, also the community services board, sort of mental health services. And Charles, you're right. I mean, Reston's about 8% of the county's total population, and this would service probably, at least 30% of the county's population.
So
Getting from South Reston to the north side is not necessarily an easy thing. Passing across that PSA strip. TSA strip.
True.
One. Yeah. We'll ask them to review this to make sure this is the complete plan that they want, that it addresses things like satellite offices versus centralization. We can ask them if they have ways of helping people with out transportation options like vouchers, and just ask them to review their language one more time. I would leave the equity and transportation to the part which I'll write up front, hopefully with help from you, John. I just wanted to add a little up front under the principal section. That's what I would propose.
And upon reflection, reframing my concern about equitable transportation access could be equitable access, whether by transportation means or some sort of way of
Yeah.
scattering services, realizing that we need to centralize to have adequate resources comprehensive resources in one place.
This is why I had added, again, I wasn't trying to let the preamble take over the plan. I had simply added the words connectivity and mobility. That was what I did, keeping in mind that we have like a huge plan with specific sections for all the different areas, but I just wanted to send a note to the public facility planners that they should adhere to these principles. So anyway, what should we do? Do you all want to vote on this in principle, subject to being able to review a draft? Or if you want, we can go ahead and clean it up, edit it, and send it back out, and then have a vote at the next meeting. Although I
feel more comfortable if we cleaned it up and then
Yeah.
Carter had a chance to see it, and then we knew exactly what we were voting on.
Yeah. I would remind, we have a whole other section of plans that deal with these things, and the agencies themselves have provided input. So I think there's a point where we have to, as they say in Hollywood, call it a wrap. And
Sure.
hoping if I do that, we can just vote it up or down next at the next meeting. And if you all could try to get any other comments, and I'll try to do this as quickly as possible. I have a huge volume of stuff ahead of me. But I'll try to go ahead and just edit this and get it off to you quickly.
In your spare time.
There is no spare time.
So Charles, just to follow up on that, so you're gonna need, what, at least a week or so to pull this together, I think?
Might be prudent to allow a week, and what I'm gonna try to do is try to get it done sooner and then give people time to review it. That's
Okay.
the issues is no one saw this till like Friday or Thursday, I guess, and we tried. So we'll try to get it done so we can, maybe at the meeting a week from now, we can vote on it.
Okay, all right. Does
Does
anyone
that
have
make
any,
sense?
does
Yes.
anyone have any concerns about that? Okay, all right, Charles, I think you have your marching orders then. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for their
You're
input.
welcome.
Okay, so let's move on to the next item. So we have dates for upcoming meetings. Now, I believe Lynn had to drop off because of her Wi-Fi access, West Virginia, but we were supposed to have next day after tomorrow, at least the initial conversations about the land use chapter. I did learn this afternoon, a little earlier, that that is probably not going to be ready, that the land use is not going to be ready for discussion. That's probably going to be a 2-meeting chapter. So we are going to need to plan for that. I was hoping to have gotten the first half or so done Wednesday, but it's not ready. So unless, and I'll just ask right now, are there any other chapters that would be ready for Wednesday? I don't believe there are. Okay, then we would not be meeting on Wednesday. We'd all get Wednesday off, which is both positive and potentially challenging as we continue to get into July. But we do have these, thank you, Lisa, that was good. Right on time here. So then we do have these meetings. Now note, these are meetings that had been previously scheduled tentatively, at least, for public engagement sessions. So look at those meetings. You can either say it now or in the next day or so if anyone sees any major conflicts they're aware of. So we're talking July 6th at 5 p.m., July 11th at 7, July 12th at 7, and then July 20th at 7. Does anybody off the tops of your heads know of any major conflicts with any of those dates?
Yeah, Walter, this is David.
Yeah, David.
I'm going to be in the wilds of northern Michigan, which is even more remote than West Virginia, on the 6th. So I won't make that one.
Okay, all right. And David, at this point, okay, so you would be out, but right. Does anyone know of any, like, I think we don't have on here any conflicts with P and Z or anything like that, hopefully not. Okay, all right, well, if anyone has other major conflicts, let Lisa know. But for now, we'll try to work towards the schedule. And I think it'll become clear as we talk through the next item on the agenda why we need to try to keep these meetings going. We still have, as was mentioned, land use and those others. St. Clair, if I could ask you just to kind of walk through each of these and let everyone know your understanding of where the discussions between the task force leads and staff is.
Yes, thank you, Supervisor Alcorn. So again, staff has been working with chapter leads to kind of work through some of the differences. At this point, with the land use chapter, I think we had a very good meeting last week between staff and the task force leads. I know the task forces leads are, kind of going back and going over some of the stuff that we discussed in the meeting. So I think, that's what they're working to prepare for some discussion with the task force on where things are at this point, where there has been agreements with staff and where there may be some differences. So that is ongoing. Environmental stewardship, I do believe there is a meeting scheduled for this week with staff and the task force leads, again, just to kind of continue to work through that chapter to try to again, identify, where there are differences and seeing where we can reach consensus on the recommendations. When it comes to equity and community, equity, I believe also Amanalo is working to try to get a meeting scheduled this week. I don't think we have a confirmed meeting yet, but I think we're trying to get one scheduled this week. And then community health and parks and open space. Both of those chapters, because of staff vacations, we're looking to get those meetings scheduled the first week of July. So both of those topics, the earliest for the next meetings between staff and the chapter leads will be the first week of July. And I think those covers the topics that are still kind of being worked through between staff and the chapter leads. Supervisor, you're muted.
Sorry, I haven't done that in a long time. Any questions? Thank you, St. Clair. Any questions or comments on additional information on any of those topic
Yes,
areas?
please.
Tammy.
Environmental stewardship. Penniman is out of town. He has the latest iteration that was I spent the whole weekend after he gave me his comments rewriting that to get rid of it is expected that to put it in language that will be fail safe with very few wills, no shoulds, and he has it. I am hoping that he'll give me permission to give that to Joe Gorney and discuss that with Joe, how that, because Joe was on the meeting with about the language last Monday. So he's aware of the problems with the language. So we're pretty much ready to go. I did find a section that Joe had eliminated that we are putting back in on flooding. But I will discuss that with Joe. I'm sure he won't have a problem with that. I think it was an oversight. So that's the essence of environmental. We've got some work to do. If Joe will, go with what we've done, we're good. But if he has a problem with the restructuring, then there's a problem. He took ours, completely restructured it. Then we had the language problem. So that has been, I rewrote it to get rid of the language problem, and Penniman's at the beach. So it's sort of that's the scenario.
Well, thank you for that. That's helpful, Tammy, just to be clear on where things are. So yeah, I think Joe is kind of waiting. So yeah, so whenever you can send that to him, I
Right.
think he'll be ready to take a look at it.
Yeah,
You.
thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Any additional information on any of those other topics? Okay, I really appreciate everybody moving forward as fast as they can. I was hoping that we would be able to start at least on land use on Wednesday. We probably got at least another 7 meetings of this task force to get through endorsements, all these chapters, and then the final version. So we're going to have to really move through these. July is going to be busy. So thank you all for everything you're doing. I'd rather we not go into August with these task force meetings. We're going to start seeing, I think, even more folks not available, but let's try to get through this.
Supervisor Alcorn,
Yes, Gary.
what about the week after the 20th? 27th, I guess.
Yes, and we can, does anyone have any obvious conflicts that they know of that week?
Which week? July?
July 20.
I guess it's 27th. I'm not looking at the calendar, but for
July 25th.
July 25th?
Mm-hmm.
20,
Does anyone know of any obvious things? We might need to schedule a couple of meetings that week, Gary.
yeah, I'm just pointing out that, maybe we want to go another 2 meetings on one of the weeks and then use the 27th also to get to the number of meetings needed.
Yeah, good idea.
7 meetings, but we might need, 5 or 6.
Yeah, good idea, Gary. So yeah, let's say tentatively at least July 20, is July 25th?
Monday, 27th is Monday.
25th is Monday, so 27th would be Wednesday.
Wait a minute, what? Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
And that's not a
25th.
holiday, should be.
25th.
So yeah, so let's look at Monday, the 25th and also the 27th.
I have a question. Probably the answer is, well, we'll
Yeah,
see what
Jan.
the answer is. But I was wondering if we could start July 6th at 7.
Good question.
The reason why is my daughter and her husband will probably be leaving around 5. They're from Alabama. I get to see them twice a year. So this is one, and then at Christmas.
Does anyone have an objection to starting that meeting at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, the 6th of July? Okay, then let's do that, Jan.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, asking you shall receive, huh?
There you go. Thank you, Jan. Enjoy that visit too. Okay, so thank you, Gary. And let's see if we can, let's see how far we can get with this. And hopefully on July 6th, we'll be able to finish off the public facilities, finish that endorsement. And then hopefully on July 6th, we'll also maybe land use, maybe environmental stewardship, and then let's see where we can go from there. And I appreciate everybody. I know we're not giving folks a long lead time to read ahead of time. So obviously trying to get, everyone's working to get things out as quickly as they can. But in some cases, there's going to be some reading on the fly, I'm afraid. So, okay. Any other comments on the upcoming topics or the dates?
One thing, Walter,
Yeah, John.
if July 6th is land use, I would not be there probably because of the planning commission.
Oh,
Oh,
forgot about that. Okay.
But maybe I could miss that. I don't know. I don't know if I have any items.
I think John needs to be there.
yes,
Yeah. Oh, Jan, I'm sorry.
But I
If
mean,
we-
you've got a lot of chapters. That doesn't mean you could, there are other chapters that you could do. I hate to put land use off, but you could do 11th and 12th for land use and do other chapters on the 6th.
Like that idea.
Yeah, Jan likes that idea. All right, well, let's make it
Think
tentative.
about it. Yeah,
Let's make
think
it
about it.
tentative for now, and we'll see what we can do.
I
Because
would
John,
keep
if it were at
that.
5, you could do 5 to 7, right?
Yes,
The land use, if you put them close together, 11 and 12, because of John's schedule,
it might work pretty good.
yeah, we actually do 2 nights in a row.
Okay,
And then there are other chapters that you could do on the 6th,
Right.
if they're ready.
if they're ready. Yeah.
Okay, all right, well, we'll keep that
Sorry.
tentative. Jan, we got your family in mind.
Yay,
John,
thank you.
you.
Oh, wonderful. Merry
Thank you.
Christmas.
And yeah, John, thank you for your service on the planning commission. So,
Thanks, Joe.
so then let's just go down. We've got just a few more things, a couple more things. You see a list, number 6, the approved topics to date. And again, as I mentioned earlier, once we get to the final task force meeting, there'll be a vote and there'll be an opportunity. Anybody going into the meeting wants to have amendments, there'll be an opportunity to vote on those amendments. And then at the final meeting. And lastly, at least substantive wise, number 7. Now, this is a document, frankly, I have not personally had a chance to read through and digest it all. Bill Mayland is on the line. And yes, thank you very much, Lisa, for putting the document. Let's see if it'll come on the screen. Looks like it's, well, let's see. There we go. That is it. Fantastic. Now, this is actually, this is building on an excellent discussion the last meeting during when the deputy county attorney was here and talking about language. And really what it involves is a lot of discussion about the relationship of the comprehensive plan to the PRC zoning district and then the other planned districts. So Bill, what I'd like to do is just have a few minutes of an overview from Bill Mayland on this document and then see if there are any questions. But frankly, what I'd like to do is let people digest this a little more and then come back with any questions at our next task force meeting. So don't feel like if you haven't read it through closely, it's okay. Because we'll be coming back. Tammy, did you have a comment or question before Bill gets started? Tammy, you're muted.
No, I do not.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I saw that's previous hand. Okay,
Sorry.
Bill, that's okay. Bill, if you could, and Lisa, we see you probably can't see this on your screen. Oh, it's got smaller. There's a little bit more of a block still there. Oh, it's almost getting smaller again. Hey, there we go. That's it. All right, nice job, Lisa. All right, Bill, take it away.
Yeah, so one thing that's unique about the PRC district is before you can rezone to the PRC district, the comprehensive plan must have the designation of residential planned community, RPC. And that's what the PRC used to be called prior to 1978. So unlike a PDC district or a PRM district, the plan has to support that to be zoned PRC. So all of the Reston area that's zoned PRC has that planning designation. We haven't had a rezoning to the PR. We've only had 2 rezonings to the PRC district in Reston since 1991. And that was one for the Reston Hospital and one for another piece of property went to 1 dwelling unit per acre. So we haven't rezoned property into the PRC district, place since 91. That's all that's happened. So underlining, the Reston area has that underlying plan designation of RPC, and that's what's required. If you're a PDC district or a PRM district, you don't need to have a special planning designation on it. You need to have a plan that would support that type of mix of uses and that type of density or intensity. Other things it talks about, when it talks about that, and you can scroll down a little bit on there, it really talks about the plan becomes part, the comprehensive plan amendment becomes part of the plan. And when you look at historically, in the 1985 comprehensive plan, which is available online, it does talk about the Reston land use designations are that shown on the Reston land use plan, or the development plans, and it does that up until in the 90s. Today, when you look at the comprehensive plan, the Reston master plan, you go back, the original Reston master plan is included as a reference. It's been superseded. The comprehensive plan today supersedes the old Reston master plans, and it has a lot more detail than those old Reston plans ever did. And that's something that we look at both in terms of this very site-specific language, as well as the breakdown of uses. And it's when I've done a development review, I never made a distinction in terms of, is the comprehensive plan have more weight or less weight depending upon PRC and non-PRC. To me, it always was the same. Whether the property was zoned PRC or the property was planned to be rezoned to the PDC or PM district, I felt I always applied the plan equally regardless of that zoning category. So I can certainly go on for that or answer questions.
Does anybody have any initial questions for Bill? And by the way, Bill, thank you so much for putting this together. This is super helpful to see things side by side. Any quick questions for Bill? Okay, Bill, keep going, and there'll be questions later, I'm sure.
Sure. So I think what else we have on here? If you can scroll down some more. Well, again, it just kind of compares a little bit area. So again, when the Reston PRC was created in 1962, and a lot of this language is the first planning district in the county. So we have some language that's been carried forward through those times, and it's really never been updated significantly, I think, since then, or a couple of times. But the Reston master plan, Reston PRC is a little bit different. They have development plans versus conceptual development plans, PRC plans versus now final development plans. So the process is a little different. But again, when you look at how the comprehensive plan relates to that zoning district, to me, I think it applies the same. It has the same weight, whether you're zone PRC or you're zone PDC. You look at the comprehensive plan, you look at the guidance, and I think we give great weight to the comprehensive plan and how we review development applications.
Okay, keep going, Bill. Do you want to scroll down? There we go.
So again, what you see on the far left is what I talked about earlier. You must have the designation of residential plan community on the plan map before you can rezone to the PRC district. This was a particular interest when, if you remember, the property at the corner of Temporary Road and Reston Parkway, which was rezoned to PRM. It was a question about should that be PRC, and they would have proceeded that way with the comprehensive plan amendment if they wanted to rezone that to PRC district. That went PRM for a number of different reasons, but that's something again we haven't seen those type of rezonings to PRC anytime recently, or out of the PRC district for that matter.
Okay. Yeah, anything else, Bill? I think there's one more page. And by the way, this was sent around to everybody, but just this afternoon, so you might not have had a chance to look at it.
So again, this is what the planning commission and the board are supposed to review when they review an application in a PRC, and it's very similar language to PRM district or PDC. You look at the comprehensive plan, you look at the development plan, determine is the PRC plan or final development plan in accordance with the previous approvals. So the comprehensive plan is always part of that review.
Okay, great. But Bill, thank you. Did you have anything else in terms of the summary at this point?
I think that was it. It was just meant to be a brief summary, and we put some notes on the side. It kind of captures my thoughts as staff as reviewing in the past.
Yeah, Bill, this is really helpful. Thank you for doing this. I have one question, then I'll just see if others have questions this evening. So, Bill, you mentioned something that is, I think, pretty obvious to a lot of us, the comprehensive plan's role in reviewing a proposed development application. So somebody, wants to change the zoning, they come in and make a proposal. The comprehensive plan is against which the application is reviewed. So, Bill, in what other situations can you think of is the comprehensive plan used? Private development, I don't mean, for county facilities and that kind of thing, but for private development, is there can you think of anything where there's a relevant review of the comprehensive plan when there's not a development application? I know it's kind of a stumper. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm trying to think offhand. Obviously, most of my applications I've always done is through development plan review. I mean, certainly at private sectors, look at the comprehensive plan and determine if what makes sense for them to come forward and propose. A lot of times we've done at staff level, even before an application gets presented to the community, there'll be discussion at staff level of, does this meet the comprehensive plan? We try to work with the developer till they understand what the plan says or does not say, and whether it would support that type of an application, or in some cases, direct them to the plan amendment process, if that's what they're trying to do. Yeah, I know other agencies may use the plan differently in terms of how they look at it in terms of parks or schools. That's something I'm not part of directly. So I can't tell you exactly how uniquely they follow the plan guidance, or they use their own planning documents for that type of work.
Okay, so Bill, thank you. So in effect, where I think, and I'm thinking now with the PRC zoned areas of Reston. So in by and large, the comprehensive plan is critical for those areas only when there is a development application that comes forward. That's different
Correct.
from current, right? So.
Correct. So, if an application has an entitlement already, so if it's zone PRC, has an approved development plan, and has either, previously a preliminary site plan approved or a PRC plan, they could develop and eventually redevelop as long as they're still in accordance with that plan, and those are previous approvals. So if there's nothing to stop an application and wants to, if it's, for instance, multifamily, they want to upgrade the facility and they're not tearing anything down, they're not rebuilding it, but they're doing, significant changes with interior to it, renovating it. The plan doesn't come into play in those type of scenarios.
Okay, all right, good to know, Bill. Thank you very much. Other questions on any of this evening? Okay, I would encourage everybody. Yeah, Mark, you're on the development side. Does this sort of square with your understanding and your experience of the process?
Yeah, I mean, we're generally speaking, I mean, Bill and I have had a lot of conversations about rezoning out of the PRC district where, the current regulations don't really permit the type of development that the comprehensive plan envisions in certain circumstances. And we've had a couple of situations where, for example, there's the limitation on the maximum 50 dwelling units to the acre on any one site. That is problematic when you think about TOD style development where you're putting 100 or 120 dwelling units per acre on a piece of property that otherwise is in conformance with the comprehensive plan in terms of its intensity, meaning its floor area ratio or FAR. But the PRC regulations on a site-by-site basis may not permit you to achieve anywhere close to what the comprehensive plan envisions. And so at some point, there's going to need to be either changes to the zoning ordinance to address items like that, or there's going to have to be rezonings that move away from the PRC district in order to accomplish the plan's objectives.
Right. So what's unique on the PRC, as most people know, is, well, number one, you don't have an FAR maximum in a PRC, where PDC, PRM, you do have floor area ratio maximum. But PRC, as Mark mentioned, has development caps. And it's really a three-part test. You have the overall 13 people per acre for all of the PRC Reston, and then you have areas designated high, medium, low, and all those areas, a high area has a certain number of a certain cap. All the areas designated medium has a certain cap, and all areas designated low have that. But the restrictive one is the area subject to the development plan is, for high density is a max of 50 dwellings per acre, and that's one that I know I think it was you, Mark, that worked on the one that was the Town Center South, whatever the name of that one is, where that potentially became a problem. We did find a way to work through that, amend the application, expand the development plan application to make it work for that particular site without rezoning out of PRC. That would not have worked for the site, beyond the plan amendment issue of the one I previously mentioned at Temporary Road and the town center, where it was an acre piece of property and they wanted to do more than 50 units. So there certainly is that potential concern where 50 dwellings per acre, may not be what you're looking for in some of the TOD areas that remain PRC zone.
And the challenge obviously is, as I've said before, the whole PRC zoning ordinance is derived from second grade math equations. And so consequently, when you take land area out of the denominator without adjusting the numerator, it messes with all of your other calculations. And, query whether some title company is going to get asked one day or some insurance company is going to get asked, what happens if the denominator shrinks and the numerator doesn't, and you end up over the 13 persons per acre cap without ever adding another unit. It's a conundrum, I'll put it that way. So
right. So in the event an application does propose a rezone out of the PRC district, that's an exercise that staff will have to look at along with the applicants of what happens to those numbers. How much land area taken out, and does it impact the overall numbers?
There's a Virginia code provision that sort of gets at this point, which is that I'll paraphrase it, but it essentially says if you are part of a larger plan development, you can modify the approvals for your site without necessarily having to bring in all of the other properties to address it. And it sort of sets up, it's born out of these large plan developments that nobody ever thought about version 2.0 and what that would look like when they did it the first time around.
Right. So at this point, I've not been part of any staff discussions on that. I could think of only one application that I worked on that rezoned any area out of the PRC and was a half acre. So the impact was insignificant about that. And that was the site over by Roland Clark, where it was a property boundary issue while they were rezoned out of PRC. But, certainly if a large area comes out of PRC, there'll have to be a lot of discussion number wise, as well as the county attorney to determine the impact.
Okay. Bill, thank you. I do see we have an attendee with his hand up, John Farrell. John, go right ahead.
Good evening, Supervisor, members of the task force. I watched last week's conversation about the unique character of the PRC, and I was surprised that the Reston National Golf Course case that Mark Looney represented, Northwestern Mutual, was not referenced at all. And I was surprised that Laura Gorey, who handled that case for the county attorney's office, was not involved in making a presentation to the committee. Fundamentally, in that case, the landowner tried to suggest that they could develop the Reston National Golf Course for mid-rise, I believe, housing. The staff issued an opinion that said if they wanted to do that, they would have to amend the Reston master plan. And the applicant didn't like that answer and appealed to the BZA, and ultimately Judge Devine, I believe, dismissed the applicant's appeal to the BZA. What I'm trying to get to is, as I read the PRC ordinance, and I read the sentence that says rezoning to and development under this district shall be permitted only in accordance with comprehensive plan and development plan. It seems to me that the PRC district is very different from all the other P districts in that in order to do development that is different from what's already established in the comprehensive plan, one needs to amend the comprehensive plan before one can go forward. That's not true anywhere else in the county. And remember, PRC is not just Reston, it's also Burke. There's an example I can give you right there at Center Point, Walter, right next to the government center, where the property across from the Center Point offices, the two tall buildings at 50 and West Ox Road, the land across the street was designated in the comprehensive plan for office. And yet, if you go there today, it's townhouses. And there was no comprehensive plan amendment because the comprehensive plan doesn't bind the governing body. I suggest to you that when you read the staff interpretation in the Reston National Golf Course case, and you read the ordinance, it's contrary-wise in PRC. If we want to change the Reston National Golf Course, as an example, to multifamily or any kind of residential, there would need to be a comprehensive plan amendment, either contemporaneously with the rezoning or before the rezoning, in order to move forward with a change in use as that use is designated in the comprehensive plan. So when I have taught zoning cases about these kind of things, I've said that the PRC in the Commonwealth is unique in that effectively the PRC ordinance gives the comprehensive plan the force of law. And I think that it would be helpful for the task force and yourself to go back and read the interpretation that the staff gave in the Reston National Golf Course case. And also, if the task force and yourself had the benefit of Ms. Gorey's insights. And I'm not trying to prejudice Mr. Looney here. He did a good job representing his client. But I think it would be very helpful for everyone to try and get on the same page as to the weight given to the Reston master plan in the PRC ordinance. The only other thing I'll mention, and I'll pass quickly, is there's a lot of back and forth over public facilities and should they be listed in the comprehensive plan and shouldn't they be listed in the comprehensive plan. This kind of answers the question that you asked, Bill. And of course, the whole purpose of the comprehensive plan is about public facilities. And if for some reason in the near or distant future, we wanted to add a performance arts center, but it's not listed in the comprehensive plan, we can go through the 2232 process. And fundamentally, if you go back and look at the history of comprehensive plans, that's the whole reason for comprehensive plans. It's a capital budgeting process to make sure it came out of the Great Society where communities south of here were taking all of the Great Society money and extending water and sewer into the white parts of town without a public hearing and without public input. And the legislation was passed by Congress saying, hey, you're going to do that, you've got to have a public hearing and tell everybody where you're going to put the water and the sewer. So it really is a capital budgeting tool. And if we want to add a facility later, like a performing arts center, we can always accomplish that through a 2232 hearing. And that's how the comp plan is used. And that was its original intended purpose. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. Bill, did you have anything at this point you want to say to Anita?
No, I mean, I would agree that both the comprehensive plan and the development applications for the golf course supported the development as is and did not support an amendment for multifamily without a plan amendment and a development plan amendment and a PRC plan. But I think that would have been the same case regardless of what zoning district was in place. If that had been zone PRM or PDC, I think that would have been the same answer, in a similar situation based on the comprehensive plan and previous entitlements, that would have been the same answer.
No, it would not.
No, I disagree.
Well, you have a case right in front of you, Bill, right across the street from your office. Go look at the EYA project and go look at the comprehensive plan language on the EYA project. And the EYA land still says it should be office space. The county's not required to comply with the comprehensive plan, except in PRC. And that's the difference.
I don't know anything about the particular reference, but I know enough that we do plan amendments all the time. There are some exceptions that allow for areas to for redevelopment, for particular office repurposing without a plan amendment, and the board has endorsed certain uses, allow for uses to go forward without a plan amendment. I don't know the specific case. I'm not going to opine upon whether the plan says or doesn't plan on a case. I have no reference to.
Okay.
I feel like a political candidate who needs to ask for equal time.
Mark, you want to say something? We do need to wrap up. But
No, it's fine.
All right, good. All right.
Right.
All right. Any other questions? But good conversation. I know this has been something a number of you have had conversations about, and I would encourage folks that are interested in this to read through the memo, come back with any additional questions at the next task force meeting. And John Farrell, thank you for weighing in on this. And if you have any additional comments or questions at the next meeting, we'd welcome those too. So. Anything else before we break for the evening? Yes, Charles. Was that a wave or was that a hand up? I couldn't tell.
Okay.
That's a wave. Okay.
Yeah, hold on, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, hold on. Sorry. Go ahead, Charles.
All right, now you can hear me. Okay, yeah. A village simpleton question. If someone wants to go from a low to a higher density per the comprehensive plan, what do they do? Like a landowner wants to do that. Do they go to the zoning board and request some kind of, or do they, what's the process?
No, what's that process?
So it depends on the specifics, but it's certainly going to be an amendment to their application. We're going to most likely be a PRC plan, potentially development plan amendment, maybe a rezoning. It depends on the specifics of what they're trying to do. So I think the application that's in front, Vantage Hill is one where I believe they're going through an amendment to the proffers, the development plan, and the PRC plan, where they're adding in, I don't know the exact number, 30, 40 townhomes into the site. They're not rezoning it because they're still staying PRC, but they are going through that entitlement process, and that was specific to the previous history to determine the next steps forward. But that did not require a plan amendment because of how it was designated in the current plan. They're still within the scopes of the plan density range.
So if it's designated, they're not designated that way in the plan, then they have to request a plan amendment.
Right. So in that particular case, where the plan designation was residential, and the density that they were proposing to be under was in accordance with the comprehensive plan. So there wasn't a planning amendment necessary for that, but it was something that they had to do, change the entitlement, which obviously goes to the public process.
Does that go to a board of supervisors or?
Yes, it'd be Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Not a crazy question at all.
It isn't the crux of that question. You can't go from one category to another. The land use plan says what it says, and it lays out the categories, and you cannot go from one category. For instance, I don't know what Vantage Hill is. If it's medium density, you can't go to the high density category without a plan amendment.
Yes, I would agree. Right. And in that particular case, they were, still in that medium, and, within that, and the current comprehensive plan is more refined than low, medium, high. It's that 8, it's the 5 to 12 and 13 to 20, which all fits in that medium category. So
Right.
I think they were in the 13 to 12, 13 to 20 and stayed in that range with additional units.
But if they tried to go to the next range to
Correct.
they'd be in trouble.
Right. Then it'd be a development plan amendment, and you'd be a comprehensive plan amendment to reflect those changes. Correct.
Just zoning board oversee it also, or the planning staff, or do they just submit their thing directly to the board of supervisors?
So no, it's an application. It's a development application.
Got
So
it.
they're gonna, them or anyone else that wants to make that change is going to have to submit an application to the county. It goes through review process. It's going to go through a internal public review. At a minimum, it has to go to the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors for public hearings. Typically, these type of development applications do a lot more public outreach than that. to do, outreach to the local community, whether it be the design review board, RA, or any number of other local review authorities. But they, planning commission and board of supervisors are at the minimum.
Just so I'm not accused of agreement by silence, two areas where Bill and I and others have sort of disagreed about some of this implementation stuff over the years. One is because a PRC plan doesn't change the property's development plan or proffers or zoning, I don't think it implicates the comprehensive plan in the way that a rezoning would. Secondly, given the history of how PRC plans have been treated in the ordinance, and because they are implementing approved zoning as opposed to changing approved zoning, I'll just say the authority of the Board of Supervisors, notwithstanding that it's the approving entity, is different in my mind than with a rezoning. And I'll leave it at that.
We'll just summarize that we disagree.
And you've just heard one of the challenges of doing comprehensive planning when there's already zoning on the ground. So, but that's, whatever. Okay. Any last comments, questions? Well, Bill, thank you very much. Mark, thank you, and everybody participated in that. We will come back. So if folks have additional questions, the next meeting we can do that. For now, have a good evening, everybody, and we'll see you next meeting.
Thank you, and have a happy 4th of July.
Thank you, Jan. You too.